Welcome to Roll, Ponder, and Play, a podcast dedicated to crafting stories through the application of role-playing game engines, combined with creative thinking and propelled into the ether by the barest of prompts. I'm Jared Hess, taking on all the roles of Game Master, Solo Player, Author, and Narrator. Come with me on a journey, and together let us explore realms of shadow, danger, and wonder. One role can decide the fate of many things. Welcome to episode 13 of the Queen of Shadows podcast on Roll, Ponder, and Play. I'm Jared Hess, your friendly neighborhood game master, solo player, author, and narrator. In our previous episode, Drystan and Kyffin find Eilwen at Frostbridge. The two men had arrived the night of the attack after seeing the smoke from Drystan's home on the outskirts of the settlement, where Kyffin had been convalescing. As they arrive, Frostbridge is holding a ceremony of remembrance, and while the bonfire burns and the people mourn their fallen, Kyffin asks to travel with Eilwen and Aron whenever they commence their journey south. She says it will be some time yet and urges him to rest up for the journey. The days pass, and Eilwen and Aron continue to help Frostbridge recover from its attack, sharing their supplies and rebuilding homes. Eventually, the day comes when Aron and Eilwen part from Frostbridge again, likely for a much longer time of absence. On the Bridge of Ice itself, their father hugs them and urges them to keep each other safe. With Kyffin in tow, the two siblings head south again towards Rockriver. After journeying a few days, they again arrive at Rockriver, and there they spy Wolf Fang clan warriors in the settlement. Not only that, but some Wolf Fang clan families have started to make it their home. To avoid running into more Wolf Fang migrants coming up from the south, and judging the mines still unsafe with the unawakened threat of the Bonewalkers, they decide to risk the more physically dangerous western pass to head west and then south around Mount Hingsworth. It's a trek that will take them higher in elevation. While making camp and preparing for their journey, Kyffin doesn't return to camp from gathering firewood. After searching, they find he has fallen into an underground ice cavern and is alive but hurt. Working together, Eilwen and Aron manage to locate him, assess that his wounds are largely superficial, and extricate him from the ice hole, and return to their camp, where they pass a miserable night shivering in the cold together. As we begin this episode, Eilwen's stats are Edge 2, Heart 1, Iron 1, Shadow 3, Wits 2. Current assets: Archer, initial box; Cutthroat, initial box; Shadowwalk, initial box; Duelist, initial box. Current statuses: Supply 3 out of 5, Spirit 4 out of 5, Health 4 out of 5, Momentum 4 out of 10. Current debilities: none. Current unspent XP: 0. And now, on to episode 13 of Queen of Shadows. After a cold breakfast of dried meat, dried fruit, and nuts that did little to warm their cold, stiffened limbs, they broke camp and resumed their journey to the western pass. Eilwen stamped her feet and wiggled her toes to awaken them, and she wished yet again that they could have turned back to time, collected more firewood, and enjoyed a night of warmth and rest before starting this journey. But the night had passed slowly for them all. A keening wind had scoured the relatively sheltered rock they had camped behind. "I don't like the look of those clouds," Aron grunted into the moaning winds after a couple of hours of hiking. His blonde beard was already starting to take on white from the flurries of snow that whirled about them. As they trudged to the west, they all stared up at the dominating heights of Kingsworth Mountain. Its peak lay shrouded in dark clouds. Half-blizzard snow conditions about the peak obscured much of what they could see. Other smaller mountain peaks jutted up on both sides with unwelcoming gray granite craggy cliffs, and also surrounded by ominous clouds that seemed ready to release their leaden load of yet more snow and ice. "At least it's not snowing," Eilwen said. "Not yet." He glowered again up at the clouds. "Come on." She gripped the hilt of her sword for a moment and then stepped out into the lead, her snowshoes crunching the snow underfoot as she hiked towards the pass. The others followed behind. So for this journey, instead of the undertake a journey move, I'll use the delve rules again to delve the depths like we did back in episode 8 when Eilwen, Aron, Codfail, and Mabon moved through the mine by Rockriver. But that delve was largely over before it began. This delve is going to be more difficult. And of course the word depths is somewhat of a misnomer, as in this case we're high up in the mountains. But the Delve the Depths move can be used to traverse any perilous site. The move states, when you traverse an area within a perilous site, envision your surroundings. Ask the oracle if unsure. Then consider your approach. If you navigate this area with haste, roll plus edge, with stealth or trickery, roll plus shadow, with observation, intuition, or expertise, roll plus wits. So first we need to envision our surroundings. The Delve rulebook says when you make a Delve the Depths move, the first step is to define the characteristics of the area you are attempting to traverse. You are moving from a known area, your current location, into an unknown area. What will you find there? Taking a moment to reveal the characteristics of an area will create context for your exploration and the result of your moves. Have a look at your theme and domain cards. They both include a feature table. When you want to define the characteristics of an area, you may ask the oracle using these tables as inspiration. So this will be a formidable delve to cut through two different veiled mountain passes, one to the west and a further one to the south, with the goal of avoiding the main route occupied by the Wolf Fang clan and arriving at slightly more temperate lands to the south. If their directions are correct, the party should be able to find a settlement a few valleys over after a few days of hard travel through these passes. For the domain card, I will use pass, as in a mountain pass. For the theme card, I will start out with wild. I'll post images of these cards on the show notes page if you're interested. I rolled on the theme and domain cards under features and got 6 territorial markings. And the danger? A discovery undermines or complicates your quest. I'll use the MAG from RPGsolo.com, that's Mark's Adventure Glyphs, and I get a saw, nighttime over the mountains, shell-like creature with tentacles, computer disk, Chinese throwing star, blades, snowflake, heart, broken sword, and owl. Got it. Ever upward they climbed, the cold snow crunching under their snowshoes, the wind whipping their cloaks and sending blinding ice crystals into the exposed skin of their faces. Thankfully, the weather had held, and for the moment no snow fell. The clouds even parted occasionally, and when they did, the bright golden white orb of the sun turned the snow into a blinding white sheet that left a purple afterimage, before the clouds again shrouded the great lamp in the sky. The day progressed like that, and the sun reached its zenith and plunged downwards. Towards mid-afternoon, the cliffs began to change. They started to notice strange designs, crude symbols and faces, painted in a chalky yet faded white paint on slate-gray walls. "Hey, what is that?" Kyffin asked, and pointed at something that glinted off to the side in the rare sun during a momentary parting of clouds, near some craggy rocks that jutted out of the ground. The mountain pass had narrowed, and the mountains frowned down upon them with each step that they took. They drew near and saw a ruined and frozen corpse on a boulder. Its chest cavity open to the weather. Its skin was pocked with strange blackened holes, as if the skin had been burned with a perfect consistency. Each hole was about half a finger length in diameter. The heart in the chest cavity was missing, as were the being's entrails. A cracked wooden mask lay near its head. "There, look," Eilwen pointed at scrapes on the cliff wall near the stones. Something big had clawed its way up the side of the mountain, leaving furrows in the stone. "Something moved through here." Kyffin uttered a low curse and gripped his spear in two hands. "Herald's bite, but I don't like this. Something big?" Eilwen knelt by the corpse and examined the wooden mask by its head. It was painted black, but faded from exposure to the weather. It had intricate artistry with faded gold and silver scrollwork. She moved her finger along the scrollwork, admiring the detailed handiwork of whomever painted this. A crack ran down the mask's middle lengthwise, and old red blood flaked and dried, marred the mask's artistry. She looked more closely at the head. The humanoid skin, preserved in the ice and snow, was gray and wrinkled as if shriveled. The eyes were also missing, splashes of red about the skin of the large eye sockets in the human-like skull. "Humanoid, but not human," Aron added darkly, prodding at it with his spear as if he expected the bones to leap up out of the snow. "No broken bones either," Eilwen said after feeling its limbs, neck, and spine. Was the attack recent? I'll say 50-50 chance. On a 3, that's a no. Is the corpse human? Somewhat likely. I get a no. Has any in the party seen its like? I think that's unlikely. And the oracle agrees and says no. I know what the corpse is, but they don't, so you don't either. Although if you've played Ironsworn, you probably do. And if you haven't played Ironsworn yet, do yourself a favor and go play it. In fact, the base PDF is free on ironswornrpg.com, so there's no excuse. And no, I didn't get paid to give that little ad. I'm just a true believer. Okay, back to the narrative. "What did this?" Kyffin asked. "And what is that?" He pointed to the corpse. "I don't know." Eilwen shook her head and studied her surroundings. Her hand on her sword hilt, a ruined iron spear and bow, lay shattered in pieces about the rocks. Arrows lay scattered about from an ornate-looking, but also equally ruined, leather quiver on the corpse's waist. Some of the arrows were lost to time and weather, but surprisingly 2 were still serviceable. Eilwen took them, adding them to her quiver. A knife blade lay sheathed in its belt. The clothing on the corpse blew in fitful tatters, thrashed by icy winds. She pulled out the knife and tested it, then nodded and added it to her own weapons belt. "Whatever did this could still be about," she said, standing. "Let's keep moving, but keep your eyes open." She frowned at the strange tracks in the snow she had seen. Recent tracks. She didn't tell the others, but they could very well be in this thing's hunting grounds. Hell's beneath, but what could make furrows in stone? She wondered to herself. Okay, they will continue onward. They are traversing with observation, intuition, or expertise. That means we make the Delve the Depths move again, and we're rolling plus wits. I rolled a 5 on the action dice, plus 2 for the wits for a 7 against 6, and a 1 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. We get plus 1 momentum and make progress on this formidable Delve progress track. Because its rank is formidable, that means each progress that we make only fills in 1 box. So we are now at 1 out of 10 boxes on the progress chart. And they find an opportunity. Since I get a strong hit, I can either envision an opportunity or roll. I will envision. They traveled for the rest of the day. She didn't see any more of the claw marks on the stones, nor the strange markings on the cliff walls. At night, they came to a tumbling river in a canyon, the gorge cut through ice and rock. They could hear the coursing water, the churning of rapids far below. Is there a bridge? I think that is somewhat likely, and I get a 10 on the oracle for a yes and. Does the bridge seem to be made for humans? 50-50 chance. I get a no, but. Do they see carvings on the bridge and scrollwork design? I think that's somewhat likely, and I get a yes. They saw an old bridge spanning the gorge made of stone. Part of the bridge was crumbling and part of it was covered with ice, but it had railings and otherwise seemed firm enough. The bridge had intricate carvings and designs similar to those on the wooden mask near the humanoid corpse they had seen. Large circling birds careened around and under the bridge, hunting for fish far below in the roiling waters. Many of the birds came up to perch on the bridge. They pulled out their bows, intending to hunt the birds for more food. Eilwen led the way, moving at a crouch behind a boulder. Aiming at a large bird, it wasn't aware of her. It carried 2 fish in its talons. The birds represent the opportunity from before, an opportunity to hunt and resupply. She will use her archer asset to help. The first part of the archer asset says, if you wield a bow, when you secure an advantage by taking a moment to aim, choose your approach and add +1. So she gets secure an advantage, move plus shadow of 3 +1 for her archer asset. That's 4 +1 for the previous bonus, that's +5. The maximum modifier you can get. And I rolled a 3 on the action dice, +5 is an 8, against a 3 and a 7 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. So she will take +1 on the next move. She lined up a shot and let fly, as did the others, and their whistling barbs streaked towards their prey. This is the resupply move. When you hunt, forage, or scavenge, roll +wits. On a strong hit, you bolster your resources, take +2 supply. On a weak hit, take up to +2 supply, but suffer -1 momentum for each. On a miss, you find nothing helpful, pay the price. Let's see what we get. I roll a 5 on the action dice, +3 for her wits of +2, +1 for the previous modifier, for an 8 total against an 8 and a 7 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So we can choose to add up to +2 supply, but suffer -1 momentum for each supply gained. And I will do that. That means our momentum drops to 3 out of 10. Their arrows slammed into the large bird, dropping it and its fish onto the bridge. They then spent 2 more hours hunting and taking down another large river bird. They took their feathered spoils, and as night began to fall, made camp on the far edge of the stone bridge amidst some boulders that had fallen from the cliff above them. There they cleaned the birds, cooked the meat, and enjoyed a good meal in a camping spot sheltered from the wind and snow. Okay, this is a make camp move, and we are rolling +supply. When you rest and recover for several hours in the wild, roll +supply. Okay, I rolled a 2 on the action dice, +5 for our supply for a 7, against a 10 and a 6 on the challenge dice for only a weak hit. She will choose to recuperate and regain +1 health. Her health is now 5 out of 5. On the morrow they ate some leftover meat and filled their water skins from the river and pressed on in their journey. Alright, this is another Delve the Depths move, again +wits. I get a 5 on the action dice, +2 is 7, against an 8 and a 7 on the challenge dice for a miss. Drat, that is not good. On a miss, reveal a danger. For 2 more days, they climbed still higher, and as they wound up switchbacks, they came to a wide overlook on their left, and on their right, a small overhang. They stared down at the gleaming valley below, sparkling in white majesty. For a brief instant, they saw Rockriver settlement, a mere dot in the distance, the water glittering like a black jewel in the sun. Then the fitful clouds common to the veiled mountains moved in below them and obscured the view. I rolled on Reveal a Danger, 82, which tells me to roll on the theme card. So I rolled a 10 on the theme card, and I get a Denizen Strikes Without Warning. Is it a young wyvern? I think that's a 50-50 chance. And the oracle says, yes. The only warning they had was the flapping sound of mighty wings, and a large winged beast dove at them with a terrible grace. Its wings cut through the clouds that trailed after it in strands of white, as mighty claws raked at them in its sudden passing dive. Okay, this is Enter the Fray move. When you enter into combat, set the rank of each of your foes. So a normal wyvern, according to the rules as written, has a rank of Extreme, which would be very tough for our fair party. A young wyvern, I'll say, has 1 rank lower than a normal wyvern, so Formidable. And since I have Aron and Kyffin, both skilled warriors, helping on my side, I'll say it lowers its rank once more, down to a manageable Dangerous. Then we roll to determine who is in control. If you are facing off against your foe, roll plus heart. Moving into position against an unaware foe or striking without warning, roll plus shadow. Or if you are ambushed, roll plus wits. This is definitely a wits roll since they are getting ambushed by this young wyvern. And we roll a 4 on the action dice plus 2 for her edge. It gives a 6 against 7 and 5 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. On a weak hit, choose 1. Bolster your position, take plus 2 momentum, or prepare to act, take initiative. We will take initiative. They ran for the cover of the small overhang, Kyffin and Eilwen arriving first, ducking, rolling on the ground as they got under it. They felt the air of its passing as its wings brushed the stone above them. It cawed out in frustration and winged around for another attack. Aron was still in the open, fumbling with his weapons. Then it began to dive toward Eilwen's brother. He managed to get out his shield, but not his axe. Kyffin had his spear out and crouched behind a boulder near Eilwen. Eilwen pulled out her bowstring taut. The arrow set and let loose. Okay, this is a strike move plus edge. I rolled a 4 on the action dice plus 2 for Eilwen's edge for a 6 against a 6 and a 2 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. Okay, so she gives it 2 harm. That's 4 out of 10 progress on the combat track, because each harm against a dangerous foe gives 2 progress each, but she loses initiative. The arrow hit its side as the thing landed and then leaped at Aron, slamming him to the ground. Claws raked at his shield. She felt both awe at this creature's grace and prowess and dismay that she had to kill it. She fumbled with her arrow and began to aim again. Okay, this is another secure and advantage move with her archer asset. I rolled a 1 on the action dice, plus 3, that's 2 from her edge, plus 1 for the archer asset, for a 4 total, against the challenge dice of 1 and 8. Okay, lucky, a weak hit. She gets plus 1 momentum, but she still doesn't have initiative. Momentum is now 4 out of 5. Kyffin shouted and left the cover of the overhang and leaped at the wyvern, jabbing his spear into its side. While only a minor hit, the piercing attack distracted the wyvern enough for Aron to scramble to his feet and yank out his axe. The wyvern hissed and snapped at Kyffin, who darted back out of reach. Then the beast beat its wings, buffeting the air, churning up snow and gravel into their faces. Aron darted forward and scoured a glancing blow on its foreleg. It hissed and snapped at his axe. Eilwen tracked it with her bow, waiting for a clear shot. Okay, this is secure an advantage with Archer again aiming. So she rolls a 6 on the action dice, plus 3 for her bonuses, for a 9 total against a 6 and a 10 for yet another weak hit. Plus 1 momentum again, momentum slowly climbing up to 5 out of 10 now. The creature swung its tail and smashed it into Aron's shield. Does Aron's shield break? I think there's a 50-50 chance that it very well might break, but the Oracle says no. The blow knocked her brother back a few paces and the shield held. Aron roared and slammed his axe into its flank again. It snapped at the shield, its teeth gaining purchase on the edge of the shield. Kyffin darted in from the other side, making some minor scores on its other flank with his spear, but nothing serious. The beast flung Aron to the side, where he rolled end over end near the edge of the overlook. Aron started to stand, his back to the cliff near the overlook's edge. A gleam of intelligence seemed to flash through the creature's eyes, and it charged Aron. So I actually rolled a 17 on the Combat Action Oracle. That's a nice little oracle that's in the base Ironsworn game, and you can use it to find out what a foe might do, or an NPC might do, in any given instance in a combat situation. And a 17 result on the oracle is provoke a reckless response. "Aron!" Eilwen shouted and shot arrow after arrow, running out from behind her cover. Kyffin did the same, charging the winged lizard. Does Aron dodge out of the way? I think there is a 50-50 chance. And the Oracle is especially generous and says yes, and... It charged toward Aron's position, apparently with the intent of barreling him off the overlook. Aron dove out of the way, and it spread its wings and launched into the air. After a couple of strong beats, it folded its wings, twisted in the air, opened them again, reversing its direction as it careened down towards them. It dodged one of Eilwen's barbs, and another bounced off its skull. Then it dove directly at her, weaving and dodging like an eel in the sky, its mouth wide, claws extended, blasting a fearsome roar in challenge. Eilwen set another arrow, pulled on the bowstring, and decided. Okay, she will do a clash move because she is shooting at a foe that is rushing towards her. So she gets to roll 1d6 plus 2 for her edge. She rolls a 4 and gets a 6 against a 3 and another 3 for a strong hit with a match. That, my friends, means we get a strong hit with a twist. Oh yeah, and I have an idea for that. I choose find an opening, inflict +1 harm. So she gives +2 harm normally for using a deadly weapon, a bow. And she gets another harm for this. That's 3 harm, and we give 2 progress for each harm. That means 6 boxes plus 4 from before gives us 10 out of 10 boxes on this progress chart. So hooray, we can now end the fight, and she will do that move. We will take decisive action to put this creature down on the ground. We are going to compare the 10 progress against the challenge dice. And hopefully we don't get any 10s. And I roll a 1 and a 10. Ooh. Well, at least it's a weak hit. She ends the fight, but there's a complication. Time seemed to slow as she saw the creature come at her. She saw its lean, muscular frame, the lithe way it whipped and dived and moved. She waited as it came on until the last terrible moment, and she released the bowstring. Her arrow darted out, quick as an adder, a blackened shaft of doom, driving into the soft flesh of the beast's open mouth and into its brain. Its large mass skidded and rolled into her, spraying up snow and rocks, even as she attempted to dive out of the way. But it had come on too quickly, and its form of dense muscle and scales slammed into her, smashing her into the rock wall. Her head smacked against unyielding stone, and stars exploded in her vision. For a moment, the world spun away into blackness. She takes 2 harm. That gives her a health of 3 out of 5 now. She came to, blinked her eyes, and focus gradually returned. She saw Aron and Kyffin pulling the creature off of her. "Eilwen," Aron breathed. "Stars, Eilwen." "Eilwen, lass, are you well?" Kyffin asked. This is an endure harm move. I roll a 1 on the action dice plus 3 for her current health for a 4 against a 2 and a 3 for a strong hit. So she will embrace the pain, keeping the damage, but will take plus 1 momentum, rising her momentum to 6 out of 10 now. Eilwen nodded groggily and winced when her companions pulled her to her feet. She wavered, but Aron was there. "That was crazy, sister, even for you. But you don't look well. Come, let's take a look at you." He helped her up, and then helped her hop over to sit on a small boulder. Her ankle ached and felt sprained. She did a self-assessment, but didn't find anything broken. But she felt like, well, there was no comparison, she decided. She had just been run over by a charging wyvern. "You did it," Kyffin said, shaking his head at her, awe in his voice. "Lass, that was one fantastic shot. 1 in 1,000. "We need to keep moving," she said, trying to stand up. The world started to spin. "You're hurt." Aron pressed her shoulders and forced her to sit back down. "You need to rest." She shook her head, gritting her teeth, and pulled his arm away. "No, I'm okay, just bruised. There may be more of them, and we need to get under cover. This overlook is too exposed. That wyvern, if it was just a young one, what if there's a larger one?" The 3 of them looked about the vast open expanse around them, nervous at the open, exposed nature of the overlook, at the path they had chosen. "Larger?" Kyffin gulped. "Come on," Eilwen said, taking a few steps, and stumbled, still dizzy. "Sister," Aron grabbed her. "Just let me lean on you a bit as we walk." Aron nodded, and together they gathered their gear and continued their journey, trying quickly to get to some cover. From the agonizing pain in her side, she probably cracked some ribs, but she gritted her teeth, and they moved around the bend away from the overlook, up and around another bend where their path went between high cliffs that rose up on either side into a narrow slot canyon. After a couple of miles moving through the slot canyon, she spotted a shallow cavity of rock a spear throws above the trail. Hoping for a campsite where they could rest, they climbed a jumble of rocks nearby and pulled themselves inside. Inside they found a small pile of bones of devoured humanoids, and wyvern scales littered the small cave. Was this the wyvern's lair they had slain? Or a different lair? Eilwen didn't know. Not wanting to stay long, they found a nest with a clutch of eggs. One was the size of a small cask of ale. Small cracks had started to spiderweb along its length. "Are these eggs more of those things?" Kyffin held his spear towards the eggs, as if he expected them to explode into full-sized tooth and claw monsters. Aron stood nearby, toeing through the bones, but looking at the cave entrance every few seconds. Eilwen crouched near the egg and listened, tracing a finger along its length. She thought that she heard a scratching sound. She pulled out a spare cloak from her pack and put it over the egg. This is that positive twist from that match earlier. I'll say that she finds a well-developed wyvern egg. Could be good, or could be bad. The dice shall decide. Back to the story. Eilwen, lass, Kyffin frowned. What are you doing? Investing in an opportunity, she said. She wrapped the egg in her cloak and put it in a somewhat protected area of her pack. You call that an opportunity? Aron asked, his mouth open. You obviously hit your head harder than I thought. It might come in handy. As what? Aron asked, folding his arms. You can't really be considering this, Eilwen. What are you thinking? That you'll train it and then ride it over these mountains? It'll be months before it comes to that, and it'll have razor-sharp teeth and claws like its mother there, and by then it'll consider us a tasty morsel. She ignored him and finished packing her bag. So what's going to happen when its mother discovers a missing egg? Kyffin asked with a tremor in his voice. And what are we going to feed it when it gets hungry? Not my food, Aron said, giving her a dark look and clutching his pouches to himself protectively. It's decided, she said, tilting up her chin and staring down her brother. Truth be told, she did feel a bit foolish, and a voice in the back of her head kept repeating, Stupid idea, stupid idea. She angrily slammed the door of her mind against that. She knew it was unwise, perhaps, but stupid? It was brilliant. What if she could train one? What an ally it would be. Plus, she had never witnessed such grace, beauty, and strength in a creature before. And, well, it might even help her with her quest. It's decided that we're going to die, a feast for its jaws, Aron said, throwing his arms up in the air. Nights beneath. Maybe I should just pass around my dagger and speed the inevitable along. To the victor go the spoils, she said. It was my shaft that killed it. The prize is mine. And I'm sure it's going to want its big brother's murderer as its mother. It won't know. But did you see it, Aron? She couldn't keep the awe out of her voice. The way it moved and fought and flew. Its incredible grace. What if... You are hopeless, he muttered and stormed out of the cave. Kyffin sighed and trailed behind him. There's one for each of you, she called after them. If you want one, she said to herself as she heard them clambering down the rocks. What if this one didn't hatch? Maybe she should take another. She shook her head. They're just jealous they didn't get the biggest one, she said to the egg in her backpack. She pulled out her knife and gave a guilty smile, holding the blade. By this iron blade and my iron will, a wyvern companion I shall bind, she vowed. Okay, she is swearing an iron vow. And this will be a dangerous vow. I rolled a 6 on the action dice, plus 1 for her heart is a 7 against a 6 and a 2 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. Nice. So I take plus 2 momentum. That brings her momentum up to 8 out of 10. She sat there a few moments, and when the dizziness subsided, she picked up her pack, shouldering it, wincing against the sudden stabbing pain in her ribs. She hissed an involuntary intake of breath, but followed after her companions, climbing down from the cavity and limping along the trail. She should be able to train it, she said to herself. She had the egg. Really, it was just a matter of getting off the mountains and down into a settlement where someone knew the intricacies of training wild creatures. She had some ideas of her own, if that didn't pan out. How hard could it be? Such a creature. Her ribs hurt and her head throbbed, but she smiled to herself as she followed after her brother and Kyffin through the high pass. Thank you for joining us, and I sincerely hope you enjoyed what you experienced. If you would like to support Roll, Ponder, and Play, you can do so by joining my Patreon at patreon.com/Roll, Ponder, and Play. There you can also find transcripts, show notes, and other projects I'm involved in. If you would like to reach out to me, you can find me on Patreon or on Discord at Roll, Ponder, and Play, or by email at rollponderandplay@gmail.com. Until we meet again, may your own dice rolls ever bring you success.